Welcome back to the deep dive. AI. It's something we hear about constantly these days, but how is it actually impacting jobs and the future of work?
Well, that's a big question, and it's definitely something that a lot of people are thinking about right now.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for our deep dive today, we're focusing on this podcast called The AI Paradox. And they had this HR consultant on there who went really in depth into the pros and cons of AI in the workplace.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah. One of the things that really stood out to me was this stat they shared from a recent report, actually, that predicted up to 40%.
Whoa.
I know 40% of global jobs could be automated within the next 15 years. They
That's
say,
15 years isn't a very far away when you think about it.
no, not at all. So
That can happen in 15 years.
exactly. And it's a little unnerving to think about what that could mean for, all of us, really.
Right.
But
Absolutely. And I think what we need to do is really look beyond just these, kind of sensational headlines about robots taking over everything.
right, it's not just about robots replacing humans on assembly lines.
Exactly. And I think a good example of this is, those self-checkout kiosks that you see at the grocery store.
Oh, yeah.
Every time you use one of those, you're interacting with AI, and it's subtly leading to, fewer jobs for cashiers.
It's true. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that.
Yeah, and same thing in manufacturing, right? Robots are already doing a lot of the jobs that humans used to do, and that trend is only going to continue.
So where does that leave all of us? What happens to the cashiers and the factory workers and everybody else whose job is impacted by this technology?
Well, I think it's important to remember that AI is going to impact jobs that aren't even being directly replaced too.
Oh, that's interesting.
Think about it this way. You're suddenly expected to learn all these new AI-powered tools.
Yeah.
Your productivity is being measured against these, AI-driven standards, and the pace of work is just increasing exponentially.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And it's easy to see how that could lead to burnout.
Absolutely. It's a lot of pressure to adapt and keep up with all of this new technology. And honestly, it feels like it's moving faster than ever before.
Yeah, it definitely is.
So it makes me wonder, whose responsibility is it to help workers adapt to all of this? Should companies be doing more? I mean,
I think they definitely should.
yeah.
The HR consultant in this podcast episode really argued that companies have this moral obligation to support their employees as AI reshapes the workplace.
So how would they do that? What could that look like?
Well, it could involve, investing in retraining programs for their employees, helping them develop new skills, or even, creating pathways for people to move into different roles within the company as their old roles become automated.
So basically, rather than just laying people off when AI takes over their jobs, they could be proactively looking for ways to retrain those people and help them find new opportunities within the company.
Exactly.
Yeah, I really like that approach. I think that makes a lot of sense, but it can't all fall on the shoulders of businesses,
Right.
right? What about the role of government in all of this?
Right. Well, on a larger scale, governments definitely have a part to play in managing this transition. There's a lot of talk about, potential solutions like universal basic income.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
It's basically this idea of providing everyone with, a guaranteed minimum income regardless of whether they have a job. And some people argue that this could be one way to address the potential for mass job displacement as a result of AI.
Interesting. So it seems like we need a multi-pronged approach here. Businesses need to step up and support their employees, and governments need to create policies that can help people navigate this new landscape.
Exactly. It's a shared responsibility to make sure that everyone benefits from this, AI revolution, not just a select few.
Absolutely. And before we get too bogged down in all the potential downsides of AI, let's shift gears a bit and talk about some of the more positive aspects of this technology.
Yeah, I'm all for that AI is not all doom and gloom.
Right. And this podcast actually spent quite a bit of time highlighting that, AI isn't just about taking away jobs. It's also about creating new ones and freeing us up from the tasks that honestly nobody really enjoys doing anyway.
It's about working smarter, not harder, right?
Exactly. So instead of sending hours, hunched over spreadsheets, we could potentially use AI to analyze that data for us
Mm-hmm.
and free up our time for more, creative and strategic work.
That's the dream.
Right. Who wouldn't want that? So what kind of new jobs are we talking about here? What are some examples of these new roles that are emerging because of AI?
Well, we're seeing entire new industries popping up around AI. Things like AI trainers. These are the people who teach AI systems how to learn and perform different tasks. And then you've got data ethicists whose job is to ensure that AI algorithms aren't perpetuating biases.
Oh, wow.
And then you have, of course, all the robotic maintenance engineers who are going to be needed to, keep all of these new AI-powered machines running smoothly.
That's true. I mean, that's a whole new industry in and of itself.
Exactly. And these are all roles that didn't even exist a few years ago. So it really makes you think about how much the job market is going to transform in the coming years.
Yeah, absolutely. And while there are definitely challenges ahead, it sounds like there's also a lot of reason for optimism.
I definitely think so.
But the key is going to be adaptability,
Right.
right? Being open to learning new skills and embracing change and thinking creatively about the future of work.
Absolutely. And I think it's also about being proactive. It's not enough to just wait and see what happens. We need to be actively engaging in these conversations about AI and its impact on our lives.
Totally. And that's exactly what we're doing here today.
That's right.
I feel like every time we learn something new about AI, it just brings up even more
Oh,
questions,
absolutely.
especially when you think about, what this means for your own career path.
It is overwhelming. There's so much information out there.
There is.
But that's kind of why we're doing this deep dive, right?
Exactly.
It's about empowering ourselves with knowledge so we can make informed decisions about the future.
Totally. And I think, one of the most important things to remember in all of this is that AI is just a tool.
Hmm.
And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad. It all depends on how we choose to use it.
It really does. It's not the AI itself. It's the choices that we make about how to implement it and, how we choose to kind of shape the future with AI.
It's like we're not just passive bystanders in this whole technological revolution.
Exactly.
We actually have the power to influence how it unfolds.
Yeah, do.
It reminds me of, the HR consultant on the podcast was saying about ethical AI adoption.
Right.
They were really emphasizing the human side of this whole thing.
Yeah, it's not just about, implementing technology for technology's sake. It's about considering the human impact and making sure that, we're using AI in a way that actually creates a more equitable and fulfilling future of work for everyone.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we actually ensure that AI is being used ethically?
Well, it starts with conversations like this,
Mhm.
having these open and honest discussions about, the potential pitfalls, the economic impacts, the societal shifts that AI is bringing, and thinking critically about how these changes are going to affect different groups of people differently and what we can do to mitigate those negative consequences.
Yeah, and it feels like those conversations need to be happening every level, right?
Yeah,
From, individual workplaces all the way up to government policy discussions.
absolutely. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about, robots and algorithms. It's about people
It is.
and making sure that everybody has the opportunity to thrive in an AI-driven world.
I like that. So as we wrap up our deep dive today into, the AI paradox and all the insights that HR consultants share, I want to leave you with this question. What steps can you take today to prepare for the future of work in an AI-driven world?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, it might mean, learning some new skills. It might mean starting those conversations in your workplace about ethical AI implementation, or maybe it even means, advocating for policies that support workers during this time of transition.
I think whatever those steps look like for you, the key is to start taking action now.
Right. Don't just wait for the future to happen. Be proactive. Go out and create the future that you want to see.
I love that the future isn't predetermined.
Yeah.
It's something that we actively create. And by understanding, the power and the potential of AI, we can shape a future of work that is both innovative and inclusive.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, so before we go, I have one final question for you.
Okay, shoot.
So we've talked a lot about the potential for, job displacement and the need for upskilling.
Hmm.
But let's say someone is listening to this and they're thinking, okay, I get it, AI is changing things, but what specific skills should I be focusing on? What are those jobs of the future that I should be aiming for? What advice would you give them?
That's a tough one. Yeah. That is the $1 million question, isn't it?
It's hard to predict the future with, 100% certainty, but I feel like based on the trends that we're seeing now, are there any particular areas that you think are going to be like really in high demand?
Well, one thing's for sure, data is going to be king in the AI-driven world.
Right.
So any skills related to data analysis, data science, data engineering, I think those are going to be really, really valuable.
That makes sense because AI is essentially, a learning machine.
Right.
And it needs that data to learn.
Exactly.
So the people who can, gather and clean and analyze and interpret data are going to be in high demand.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about those technical skills.
Oh,
As AI starts to kind of take over those more routine tasks, there's going to be even more of a demand for those uniquely human skills. Things that AI just can't replicate, things like critical thinking, problem solving,
Hmm.
even communication.
Right. So things like creativity and emotional intelligence and collaboration,
All
all that.
all the things that make us human,
Yeah.
because those are going to be the skills that allow people to thrive in those roles that require, adaptability, ingenuity, and a deep understanding of, human needs and motivations.
I like that.
Yeah.
So what kind of jobs are we talking about specifically? What are some examples of, roles where those skills are going to be really valuable?
Well, think about things like, user experience designers,
Oh,
strategists, human resources professionals, even artists and entrepreneurs.
okay.
Those are all fields where human creativity and ingenuity are really irreplaceable.
Yeah, those are great examples. And what about this idea of lifelong learning? I feel like we've touched on it a little bit,
Right.
but in this constantly evolving job market, you know, being willing to constantly learn and adapt is going to be more important than ever before.
Absolutely. I mean, the days of just like learning one skill set and sticking with it for your entire career are over.
Right.
In an AI-driven world, we all need to be lifelong learners, and that means being open to new ideas,
Hmm.
being willing to experiment, and constantly looking for opportunities to grow and develop those new skills.
And it sounds like those opportunities aren't always going to look like, traditional education.
Not all.
I mean, we're talking about things like online courses and workshops and mentoring relationships and even just, self-directed learning.
Exactly. The key is to be proactive and take charge of your own learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been such an insightful conversation. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of, this huge topic, but thank you so much for sharing all of these insights with us.
It's been my pleasure. And, this is really just the beginning of the conversation. The more we talk about these things, the better equipped we'll be to shape the future that we want.
Well said. And to all of our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI and its impact on the future of work. We hope you found it informative and inspiring. Remember, the future is not something that happens to us. It's something that we create. So let's go out there and create a future that we can all be proud of. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.